Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I want to do some prognosticating and some speculation about maybe some potential game date releases that we might be getting here in the very near future. Now, I'm not basing this off any inside information. This is just stuff I'm going off observing the current landscape and what we know and don't know about some upcoming game releases, stuff that's already on the calendar. And the first thing I want to talk about, we're just going to dive right into it, is now that Days Gone has come out, and that was one of the big shoes to drop for Sony with their exclusive lineup, we really don't know anything else about what they have coming down the line other than the names of their big games. We have no clue about the release dates. There's been some rumor and speculation about whether or not some of these titles might be cross-gen releases coming out with the PS5, which I have speculated will be coming out sometime in mid to late 2020. So now that Days Gone has come out and is enjoying what seems to be pretty good sales from the early reports, we don't know how much the physical sales for the UK is going to translate to the rest of the sales worldwide, but I would say that it's a pretty good indication that people are certainly buying the game. So after a few weeks go by, is it likely that we might see a release date announced for The Last of Us 2? A lot of people said that it might be foolish for Sony to release both of these games in the same year, but with Days Gone off to what looks to be a very good start, would they give that title maybe a few more weeks to breathe, and then while people are still talking about Days Gone, come up with the release date for The Last of Us 2? Because let's face the facts, The Last of Us 2 is surely going to outsell anything that Days Gone does. It's a game that people have been anticipating for years, whether you like it or not, or whether I like it or not. It's a game that people are very excited for, and it surely is going to sell quite well whenever it comes out. So could Sony just be sitting back and taking up whatever solid sales they might be getting out of Days Gone, and once the hubbub dies down for that game, come out and say, hey, here's when The Last of Us 2 is coming out, so you guys can start lining up for pre-orders for that game. And in fact, I do think we will see some sort of announcement for a release date for The Last of Us 2 coming up pretty soon, because I will also go out on a limb and speculate that any release date that we get is probably going to be a bit of a bluff, and I think that the game will in fact be announced to be coming out later on this year, but in fact I think it will come out in the springtime of 2020. Something seems to happen with Naughty Dog games where they get announced for a certain date and then they always seem to get pushed back an extended period of time. This has happened with their last few games, and I will not be surprised at all to see another delay when it comes to The Last of Us 2. I'm sure this game is going to be a lot of eyes on it, especially critical eyes. It's a game that the reviewers, especially on the corporate sites, are going to be looking for a lot of story. So you know that Naughty Dog is going to try to get that game right. And I think as a result, they might have a little bit of stage fright. And I think that that game will get delayed inevitably. But I think we might see an initial release date popping up pretty soon, just because I think that the timing will be right. They're getting a lot of generally good buzz about Days Gone. So I think that an announcement about Last of Us 2 will be imminent. Again, I'm not basing that on any inside info. I just think that the timing will be right. Now, is Sony going to completely abandon the fall season? No, I don't think so. I think you will actually see Ghost of Tsushima get a release date for the fall, and I think that that is a title that probably will hit later on in the year. I don't think Sony is going to be willing to go a full calendar year in between exclusive releases, especially, like I said, fans seem to be generally positive about Days Gone, so I think they would like to get another Sony exclusive out before the end of the year, and Ghost of Tsushima is the most likely candidate simply because it's been a very long time since Sucker Punch put out a game. It's been since March of 2014, so we've already been over 5 years since the release of their last major title. Of course, they had the spin-off title for Infamous. It was called First Light, but that was basically glorified DLC for Second Son. So I think it's more than overdue for Sucker Punch to deliver a game, and I think that the time will be sometime this fall for Sony to release that game. Now, let's break away from Sony and look at the general gaming landscape, because I made a video back near New Year's, and in that video I discussed how I thought that 2019 would be bringing a very solid stable of new games down the line, especially maybe some games that weren't necessarily from the larger AAA studios, some B-tier games. Now, as the year has gone on, we actually have gotten quite a few games that have done pretty well, both with reviewers and critics. You have games like Sekiro, Metro Exodus basically did pretty well mostly across the board. You have games like Devil May Cry 5 and Resident Evil 2 that all reviewed very well. You've also had plenty of games that fell flat on their face like Anthem and Crackdown 3, and then you have games that have been more of a mixed bag here recently with Days Gone and some of the controversy surrounding those review scores there. So overall, we've had a pretty decent few months here for the beginning of 2019, but now something has happened which I didn't really anticipate, but I was thinking we were going to be getting some announcements for upcoming games, maybe in March or early April, that we never ended up getting for upcoming games coming in the summer months, because as it stands right now, the horizon is bare for the next several months. It's not like last year. At this time last year, we were still sitting on the imminent release of God of War, and we were looking at Detroit Become Human, games like Vampire. We had August, which had a bunch of new indie titles headlined by Dead Cells. We knew that Spider-Man was coming up in September and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and we also knew that in the fall you were going to have games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then of course at E3 we got news of the ill-fated Fallout 76. But my point is that we knew about a lot of games that were coming up. Whether or not you were excited about those games or I was excited about those games, those are big name titles that we knew about at this point in 2018 for the most part. Of course, like I said, Fallout 76 we didn't know about until E3, but for the most part the rest of those games are games that we knew about at this point last year. And what do we have this year? Well, it looks very barren. All we know about now really is Borderlands 3 and The Outer Worlds and a few other smaller titles. And of course we know that Randy Pitchford, the aspiring magician, did his best magic trick of all and made the hype for Borderlands 3 almost completely disappear with his comments about Steam and lashing out at fans and blocking people all over Twitter. So the one big name title that we had announced, the hype for that has quickly dissipated simply because the CEO has gone and made a fool out of himself once again, as he is prone to do. Randy Pitchford certainly has a long track record of looking a bit foolish. And with The Outer Worlds suffering the same Epic Games fate as Borderlands 3, I know a lot of the interest and hype has died around that game, especially among PC players, and generally the game had a lot of hype and positivity surrounding the game when it first got announced, and now it has left a sour taste in many people's mouth simply because of this Epic Games Store situation. And aside from that, we don't really have release dates for much else. I know some people are interested in Rage 2. It's not really a game that I was very much interested in to begin with, and as I said a few months ago in another video, I'm not purchasing anything from Bethesda Softworks this year. I am boycotting them just as a matter of principle based on the shenanigans they pulled last year with Fallout 76 and the way they handled the public relations aspect of that. I've talked about that at length, but as a result, of course, a game like Rage 2 is a game that I won't be picking up this year. But what else do we have? What else has been announced? Really nothing else. I know a lot of people are looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077, but that's another game without a release date, and according to CD Projekt Red, the footage and the gameplay stuff that we saw last year at E3 has now basically been scrapped, and the game now is totally different than what we saw last year. That's according to them. So who knows what that's going to look like, and who knows what that is going to do to the timetable for the release of that game. I always have said that I don't think that is a 2019 game. I think it is a 2020 game, and that's another game much like The Last of Us. I think if they do end up putting out a 2019 release date for that game, maybe at E3, I think that game also will inevitably get delayed. I think that is exactly what will happen. They did the same thing with Witcher 3. I think just in order to build up more of a suspense and some talk about the game, I think they'll want a full year of a promised release date for that game. That is how marketing works with these really big games. So what does that mean for the rest of 2019? Because it seems now that the year was very much front-loaded. I know a lot of game studios, especially companies like Capcom, have decided to jump into those early month windows, and Capcom has been hugely successful doing that now for a few years in a row. And I don't see any reason why they should stop, but this year what we saw is several other companies jump into that same window, whether it be EA, Ubisoft, Microsoft, And Sony just had this exclusive game, Days Gone, come out recently. So all of the major studios, really, Activision, hell, yeah, Sekiro is an Activision game. So really all of the big publishers pushed out some sort of game here just in the first 4 months. And it looks like now the cupboard is kind of bare unless we start getting some more release dates very soon. Because as it stands right now, what looked to be a very promising 2019 year for gaming, at least in my mind, looks like it might be fizzling out a little bit sooner than I anticipated. So let me know what you guys think. Is there a big game that I'm missing here that is really on your radars? Maybe there's a sleeper game, a smaller game that maybe I don't even know about that you guys can fill me in, maybe something I can keep my eye on as we head forward. But anyway, I'm Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you want to stay in tune with the channel, head forward, and as always, keep it turned to 11.